Hey everyone, and a very warm welcome. In so many sacred stories, we see this really familiar, kind of heavy pattern. A city gets a warning, they don't listen, and then comes destruction. But today, we're going to dive into a pretty rare and honestly beautiful exception from the Quran, a story that's not about tragedy, but about hope.
So that's the big question, right? What happens when a whole city actually listens? It seems so simple, but the answer is just profound. Because these stories are usually warnings. We don't often get to see what's on the other side. What happens when faith shows up before the disaster, not during it? Well, the Quran gives us this one incredible example.
All right, so to really get why this one story is such a big deal, we first have to talk about the standard script. This familiar and often tragic pattern that we see play out over and over again. So the typical sequence goes something like this. A messenger comes to town with a clear warning from God. The people, they reject him, they laugh it off. Then the punishment starts to roll in, and it's only in that moment of pure terror that they say, okay, we believe. But by then, it's just too late for it to do them any good in this life. The choice was made.
But what if a city just broke that cycle? What if they heard the warning and said, wait a minute, and chose a totally different path? This is where our story begins. It's the story of the people of the prophet Jonah, or Yunus, as he's known in the Quran.
So you've got these two timelines right here, side by side. Both start at the exact same point. A prophet gives a warning. But that second step, that's the crucial fork in the road. One path is disbelief. That's the common pattern. But the other path, the one Jonah's people took, is belief. And that one single collective choice completely flips the script. It transforms what should have been punishment into mercy.
And look, this isn't just someone's interpretation. The Quran says it flat out. This verse asks this powerful question, basically saying, has this ever happened anywhere else? It's highlighting just how unique this was. And it confirms that when they chose to believe, God removed the looming punishment and let them enjoy their lives. Their faith had a real, immediate benefit.
So the key here is that their success wasn't just some random accident. It actually followed a very clear sequence. They got the warning, which made them stop and reflect. That reflection led to real repentance, which then blossomed into belief as a whole community. And the final beautiful result of that whole process? Mercy. It's like a roadmap to salvation.
This brings up a huge theological question, doesn't it? If this outcome is so much better, why doesn't it happen all the time? Why doesn't God just, make everyone believe? Well, the story of Jonah's people actually gives us the answer to that too.
This next verse puts everything into perspective. It says so clearly that if God wanted to, he could have made every single person on earth a believer. The power is absolutely there. But then it asks this amazing question. Would you then force people to believe? And the unspoken answer is of course not, because faith that's forced isn't real faith at all.
And this gets to a core principle of the whole tradition. There's no compulsion in faith. The entire system is built on our free will, on a commitment we choose to make. Guidance is an invitation, not an order. The people of Jonah were saved precisely because they freely chose to accept that invitation. Okay, so if belief is a free choice, how does that actually work? What are the mechanics of it all? The verses that follow give us this fascinating look at the partnership between our own efforts and God's grace.
It's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer the Quran gives isn't just one-sided. It's not just about us, and it's not just about God. It's a two-way street, a real partnership between the divine and the human.
And here's how that partnership works. First, belief is a gift from God. It ultimately requires his permission. But, and this is a huge but, our role is absolutely crucial. The verse warns that a kind of spiritual blindness, a defilement, is placed on people who refuse to use their reason. So while God can open our hearts, if we willfully ignore the signs and refuse to think critically, we can actually close them ourselves. The signs are everywhere, but we have to be open and receptive to even see them.
So all of this, it's all building towards the final, powerful takeaway from this passage. While so many stories end with the consequences of denial, the story of Jonah's people serves as real-world proof of a much bigger, much more comforting, universal promise.
After all the warnings, all the choices, all the talk about consequences, the narrative lands on something incredibly solid. It concludes not with a threat, but with a binding commitment from God himself.
Just listen to the power of that language, an obligation upon us. That is an incredibly strong way to phrase it. It frames saving the believers not as just something that might happen, but as a self-imposed duty that God has taken upon himself. It's just this anchor of hope.
And that, right there,
brings us full circle. The story of this one city isn't just some historical fluke. It is the living, breathing, tangible proof of that very promise. They held up their end of the bargain. They chose to believe, and God, in turn, fulfilled his obligation to save them.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this. Let's look again at that 5-step roadmap: warning, reflection, repentance, belief, and mercy. In our own lives, and in the world we see around us, which of those first 4 steps do you think gets missed the most often? It's a question really worth thinking about. Thanks so much for joining me.